Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
During a special sitting of the House, federal party leaders spoke about the importance of the crown in a tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. We hear from many others who travel from around the world to pay their respects while seeing the Queen lying in state. And we hear about an Ottawa police officer who's being charged with discreditable conduct after allegedly donating to the Freedom Convoy back in February.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke about the enduring importance of the crown in the tribute to the late monarch in the House of Commons. Members of all political stripes rose in tribute to Queen Elizabeth II in a special sitting of the House.
Canadians feel like they've lost a family member who grew up alongside us. See, she was only 9 years old when she carried out what was perhaps her first official duty for Canada, appearing on a postage stamp. That was in 1935.
Now, though this system is 800 years old, it is only one generation deep. If one generation throws it away, all may lose it forever. And that is why the work of Her Majesty in preserving that liberty and that system is such a treasured gift to us all and to many more yet to come.
Congratulate King Charles III as he takes on the legacy of his mother. He must mourn this most profound loss before the eyes of the world, while ensuring that he lives up to her example of duty above all else. I hope that he will meet the challenge of reconciliation that has been laid out by First Nations leaders and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says the vast majority of Quebecers reject the very idea of a monarchy. Blanchet hopes to be able to provoke a debate on the abolition of the monarchy, notwithstanding the constitutional difficulties.
It's about time we start thinking about this thing of the past.
Do you think Canadians and Quebecers actually care about this, or is it just an issue they're fairly indifferent about right now? Is it a burning thing?
Don't you care about something you pay for? Huge amounts of money. What would we do with something like $60 million a year to help people build houses for people who need it, to have social programs, to do some transfers for health care in Quebec and provinces? This is a waste of more than $60 million for a show, terribly expensive, and, kind of humiliating for people who vote and pay.
David Beckham was very emotional as he joined members of the public paying their respects to the Queen in Westminster Hall. The former England soccer captain bowed his head as he passed Her Majesty's casket. Beckham said he waited 12 hours to pay his respects to the monarch. Beckham was asked how he felt after the emotional week. He said, quote, "We're all going through this. We all want to experience something and to celebrate the amazing life of our Queen. I think something like this is meant to be shared together." CBN's UK correspondent Beth Parkinson reports from London now as the public continues paying respects to Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II.
We are a nation in mourning as the second Elizabethan age draws to a close. Here in the UK, we prepare for the first state funeral since Winston Churchill as we mourn the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. Outside Buckingham Palace, we speak to those who've travelled to pay their respects.
Actually, I came to this country in the early 90s, and for me, it was the royalty was a big symbol of like a union coming together, and it's a very sad times at the moment.
I just felt it's like losing a grandma. It's somebody you've known all your life.
She was a very important person for me. Well, not just for me, for my family and my grandparents and stuff like that, because of the World War II and stuff.
At the heart of her 70-year reign was her faith. Her reliance on her relationship with Jesus as her Saviour became more clear with each passing year.
She's spoken of her faith. She's never been ashamed of her faith, and I honour her today.
I was thinking about the other day that she was a fantastic witness. She just witnessed about, she didn't shy away from the fact that her strength came from God.
Today, amongst the reverential laying of flowers, lives a beautiful, quiet hope. We thank God for a life well lived and that the Queen is now at rest with Jesus. We pray for her family as they grieve, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. And we also pray for her son, our King of State and defender of the faith, His Majesty King Charles III. As we pray, we remember Her Majesty's words. Grief is the price we pay for love. Beth Parkinson, reporting for CBN Europe, London.
A couple of books of condolences for the royal family were set up here in Lethbridge. One was located at Lethbridge City Hall and the other inside of the provincial building. Locals were invited to stop by and sign the book, offering condolences and sharing what Queen Elizabeth II really meant to them. The books will then be sent to the legislature. The books will then be part of a package which will be sent by the province to the royal family. You know, even though the first official day of fall is not until next Thursday, it felt a little bit like it today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, we are seeing slightly cooler temperatures now in southwestern Alberta, but how's the weekend shaping up?
Well, a little bit cooler than what we have been used to, but still a bit above average as we're still going to be hitting those low 20s with lots of sunshine over the weekend. That said, however, we're looking at an overnight low of 6 degrees, west winds gusting from 30 to 50 kilometers per hour overnight. Those west winds are going to be sticking around into Saturday as we'll be seeing them gusting from 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, but a nice sunny day on Saturday with a high of 22 degrees. That sunshine should be sticking around into Sunday as well, and I'll have that 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. A police officer in Ottawa is facing a charge of discreditable conduct for allegedly donating money to the Freedom Convoy during the rally in downtown Ottawa last February. Following an investigation by a chief's complaint, Constable Christina Nielsen appeared for a disciplinary hearing on Thursday to face the misconduct charge. Investigators allege Nielsen donated cash to the Freedom Convoy Fund through Give, Send, Go on February the 5th. The hearing alleges she acted in a disorderly manner or in a manner to bring discredit upon the reputation of the Ottawa Police Service. The Ontario Provincial Police are also investigating allegations that some of their officers also donated to the Freedom Convoy protest. Thousands of people rolled into Ottawa last winter and camped out protesting many of the government's COVID-19 mandates. More charges have been laid in connection with last February's Coutts border blockade and protest. 32-year-old Marco Van Hugenbos and 53-year-old Alex Van Herk, both of Fort Macleod, and 43-year-old Gerhard Jansen of Tabor have all been charged with mischief over $5,000. These charges stem from their alleged involvement in the blockade, which took place between January 29th to February 15th of this year. All three have been released and will appear in Lethbridge Provincial Court on October the 4th. Lethbridge police have charged a 56-year-old man with multiple offenses in connection with a number of robberies in the city. On Wednesday, police were called to a business on 30th Street North where they discovered a hole, a cut fence, and $18,000 worth of tools stolen. They believe the male subject who grabbed the tools was also in possession of a stolen truck at the time. The man was arrested without incident at a home later on 7A Avenue South. Police say $37,000 worth of stolen property was recovered, including tools, 2 motorbikes, and a number of catalytic converters. Thomas Adams of Lethbridge faces 10 charges and appeared in court earlier today to answer to those charges. A 36-year-old Colehurst man has been charged in connection with a robbery of Gas Plus on the city's west side. Lethbridge police say Travis Dar stole a carton of cigarettes, and when confronted, he pushed the employee and fled the scene on Jerry Potts Boulevard. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Police believe Dar was also involved in the theft of another carton of smokes on September 13th at the Safeway Gas Bar on Fairway Plaza Road South. Dar is charged with robbery and theft under $5,000. He was released from custody and will appear in court on November the 16th. Firefighters in Medicine Hat were called out to a blaze earlier today at a building that was once the Royal Hotel. When fire crews arrived, they saw the building on South Railway Street engulfed in flames and smoke. City officials asked locals to avoid the areas they battled the blaze. No injuries have been reported so far, and the cause of the fire is under investigation. The former Royal Hotel originally opened in 1904, but then closed in 2019 before reopening as the Royal, a bar in Medicine Hat. The province announced more help for the victims of the devastating floods in Pakistan. Officials said the Alberta government will match dollar for dollar every donations Albertans make to the Canadian Red Cross up to a maximum of $500,000. The funds will help support those who are impacted by the floods and landslides that have left so many people homeless and which also claim more than 1,200 lives. Last month, Ottawa pledged $5 million in funding for humanitarian aid to Pakistan. That was on top of the $3 million already given by Canada through the UN Central Emergency Response Fund. Meanwhile, flash floods swept through a number of towns and villages in central Italy following hours of heavy rain. Officials say so far 10 people have died and at least 4 others are still missing. Dozens of survivors climbed onto rooftops to escape the rising waters. Hundreds of firefighters on rescue operations waded through waist-high water in flooded streets, while others operated rubber dinghies to scoop up survivors along their path. A recent Ipsos survey says more than 50% of Albertans are $200 or less from being unable to pay all of their bills by the end of the month. Alberta's opposition leader, Rachel Notley, says the province needs to do more to protect Albertans from rising utility rates.
New price projections for Calgary utility provider Enmax and Edmonton provider EPCOR show that both companies believe the rate for electricity will reach nearly 23 cents per kilowatt hour this fall. We cannot find any record anywhere of prices ever being this high. For context, that is double what Albertans were paying just a few months ago, and much higher than last winter.
The UCP announced that as of July, 1.9 million homes, farms and businesses would receive a total of $300 in rebates over 6 months to help cover the high electricity costs. The annual Citizens Walkabout event took place earlier today. Participants walked through downtown Lethbridge, raising awareness of disability rights. As BCN's Angela Stewart reports, one participant says she would like to see more inclusivity, not just in the community, but nationally as well.
This is an excellent chance to bring those connections back, bring that feeling of community back.
Close to 100 locals took to the streets Friday morning in downtown Lethbridge to spread an important message. Mark Davids with the Southern Alberta Individualized Planning Association says that message is all about having more inclusivity.
And it's really just meant to bring awareness to the community that there are people here with disabilities that are engaged and empowered citizens that wish to be a part of the community the same as anyone else.
The 12th annual Citizens Walkabout kicked off at City Hall and wrapped up at Galt Gardens, with many carrying signs and raising awareness about disability rights.
No matter how different our abilities are, where we come from, we're all the same and we all should remain connected.
Feels really good to be here. I love coming here every year.
Melanie Scout, a participant, says it's important to bring the community together, especially for those who might be too afraid to speak up.
Some people don't have voices, so we need to speak up for them.
Scout, who suffers from a physical disability, says there needs to be more inclusion within the community, and this type of event is perfect for spreading that awareness.
I won't let the things that people call me down about stop me from going out every day. Show everybody who we are, and we are a part of this community as well.
On a provincial level, David says more could be done, including offering things like more accessibility options for those living with a disability.
Here provincially, because with inflation the way it's been, people are closer to poverty than they've ever been. If the people have that on their mind when they're making choices, especially when we're voting or work on community services, I think we've made a huge win here.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
The countdown to one of Lethbridge's last festivals of the year is on. This Saturday's Coulee Fest will be the first festival Lethbridge College has hosted since the pandemic. Admission is free and attendees can take in live music, interactive program showcases, and lots of food and drink. Jojo Karaoke is the college's Student Association Vice President of Student Life, and she says this isn't just a festival for the college, it's for the entire community.
We're finally getting back to a sense of normalcy, so celebrating the achievements we have as a college, and with fact, embracing the community at large as well. This is free, so it gives a great sense of anybody and everybody can come. We have kiddie games, we have princess ponies, we have a petting zoo, so bring your kids over. We have beer gardens, so everyone over the age. We have food trucks and community vendors, and right now we have like about 75 vendors supporting the event and going to show up. So that's a lot. You get to learn more about Lethbridge, you get to enjoy different cuisines, all those food trucks. And then at the same time, Coulee Fest happens like right at the edge of fall, so making it get struck on you that summer is actually done. So food trucks are going to go on hibernation. So it's enjoy the last bit of it.
Looking forward to Coulee Fest this weekend at Lethbridge College on Saturday. There's been a lot of discussion surrounding the Trudeau Liberals' new legislation, Bill C-21, or the handgun ban, as some refer to it. The subject of gun violence has come up a lot in Canada recently, following yet another mass shooting in the United States. Alan Friesen is a firearms instructor and past president of the Alberta Fish and Game Association. He says Bill C-21 is an attack on legal gun owners. He says we already have laws making it difficult to own a firearm here in Canada as opposed to the United States.
You could buy a gun anywhere, any weekend. You can go to a swap meet and buy a gun in the United States, right? They don't even ask for your piece of ID, right? Here, you have to take a course. You have to take 2 courses, Canadian Firearm Safety Course or Canadian Firearm Restricted Safety Course, in order that you can apply for a license. When you apply for license, you're going to answer questions about your mental health, your financial health, your marital health, or your relationship health, those kind of things. You're going to provide references that are going to check you over. They're going to, of course, going to do a police check. And firearm owners in Canada are the most vetted people in our whole country.
Make sure you catch the full interview with firearms instructor Alan Friesen and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our newscast. Well, the NHL season officially gets underway on October the 7th. Mark that down on the calendar. Will the Calgary Flames win the Pacific Division again, especially with all the changes they made in the offseason, losing Gaudreau and Tkachuk, but adding Huberdeau, Weegar and Kadri? As for the Edmonton Oilers, they too did some tweaking in the offseason, bringing in prize goalie Jack Campbell. Oilers star forward Connor McDavid believes his club can take their game to a new level to try and win the Stanley Cup.
It takes everything you really have to win, and you see a lot of sacrifices that go on in the playoffs. I mean, Leo playing through that injury, Nursey playing through that injury, but even on the other side, you look at Kadri going through his thing. I think Cogliano, playing hurt and stuff like that. So, it takes just about everything that you have, and that's what it takes to win. Yeah, there's lots of great players in the league right now. Lots of skill, lots of talent. I think the speed of the game is never been faster. We're seeing some really creative plays with what Zegras is doing, and I think offensively the game has never been as dynamic. Not to knock on any other eras or anything like that, but I just think that the skill is pretty wild right now in the NHL, and it's fun to be a part of.
Well, we had lots of sunshine mixed with cloud today and a nice blue sky as well, but slightly cooler temperatures in Lethbridge. But not a bad weekend is shaping up. We'll have a complete look at the weather picture in just a moment. We had lots of cloud cover again today, and some regions of southwestern Alberta even saw some light showers. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, I even saw some leaves changing color in my neighborhood. Hey, fall's not supposed to be here until next Thursday.
So true, Hal, but I think it's those overnight lows and those chilly, crisp mornings that are doing it, even though we're reaching, a decent daytime high at times. Now, we mentioned that fall isn't until Thursday, but look at what's coming at us on a Tuesday. There we go, into the single digits during the daytime. Saturday and Sunday, as I mentioned before, sunshine, 21 degrees Saturday, 20 degrees the high on Sunday, up to a lovely 23 on Monday with lots of sunshine. And then it almost looks like fall just begins right on Tuesday. Even though the official day isn't until Thursday, we're looking at a high of 9 degrees on Tuesday with a chance of showers. Into Wednesday, partly cloudy skies, high of 14, and then up to 20 degrees on a Thursday with mainly sunny skies. Now, the average high for this time of year is 20 degrees, so we've been kind of sticking around that, particularly this weekend coming up. Average low 5 degrees, 32. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1938. It seemed like not that long ago we were sitting at 32 degrees. -4 was our low on this day back in 1969, and the sun rose this morning at 7:09 a.m. Sunset this evening at 7:44 p.m., giving us 12 hours and 35 minutes of daylight, just like that. Okay, on the West Coast, we're looking at 17 for the high in Victoria with partly cloudy skies, 19 and light winds in Vancouver expected tomorrow, 13 degrees the high tomorrow in Edmonton with a 30% chance of showers, looking at 20 K winds, 18 the high tomorrow in Calgary with mainly sunny skies, also looking at 20 km/h winds. Now, the rest of the prairies, we're seeing some sunshine in Saskatoon, high of 22, 20 the high in Regina with mainly cloudy skies, a high of 17 expected tomorrow in Winnipeg with a 30% chance of showers. As we look to central Canada, looking into Toronto, we are seeing partly cloudy skies, high of 26 degrees. Should be still a lovely day. There's actually a humidex there as well of 31. 22 the high in Ottawa tomorrow and a high of 21 in Montreal tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. As we look to the East Coast, Atlantic Canada, Fredericton, beautiful sunny day, 18 the high, same thing for Halifax, 18 the high there, 17 the high in Charlottetown with clear skies and a 40% chance of showers in St. John's, looking at wind gusts up to 60 km/h, 16 the high there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
A drop in the personal and household goods subsector was behind a 0.6% decline in wholesale sales in July. Stats Canada says sales fell in 5 of the 7 subsectors, which represented 63% of wholesale sales. Sales of personal and household goods fell 2.6% to $10.8 billion. Clothing, footwear, and textiles fell 13.2%. Overall, sales in constant dollar terms fell 1% in July. The annual rate of housing starts was down in August compared to July. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says the seasonally adjusted annual rate of starts in August was 267,443 units. That is down 3% from the previous month. The decrease came as the annual pace of urban starts fell 3% last month. Multi-unit urban starts, meanwhile, fell 4%. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers is accusing Uber of violating the Labour Relations Act. CUPW says it filed an unfair labour practices complaint with the Ontario Labour Relations Board. Uber and the union signed an agreement earlier this year allowing CUPW to represent around 100,000 drivers and couriers if requested by the workers, but it does not unionize them. CUPW says there was no worker input into the agreement and that Uber used its app and email list to promote the deal to drivers and couriers. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 174 points on the day to finish at 19,385. The Dow was down 139 points to 30,822. The S&P 500 was down 28 on the day to 3873, and the Nasdaq was down 103 points to 11,448. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 23 cents to 85.33 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 51 cents to 7.81 US. Gold was up $9.95 to 16.7506 US an ounce, and silver was up 42 cents to 19.59 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.15 per bushel, barley's at $8.67, canola's at $17.20, and corn is at $11.55 per bushel. Live cattle were down 13 cents to $145.50. Feeder cattle were up 33 cents to $181.25, and lean hogs were up 85 cents to $96.90. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 75.39 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, thousands of mourners filed by Queen Elizabeth's casket as she lies in state at Westminster Hall. King Charles III, his sister, and 2 brothers stood vigil around their mother's casket. Now tomorrow, the Queen's 8 grandchildren will stand vigil and see their grandmother one last time. The Queen's funeral is slated for Monday. Travis Taves is Alberta's former finance minister. He's also one of the leading candidates to succeed Jason Kenney as premier next month. Coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with the UCP leadership hopeful. Find out where he stands on a number of issues, including an Alberta Provincial Police Force. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Find unique gifts and support budding entrepreneurs at the 2nd Annual Kids Entrepreneur Fall Market, taking place Saturday, September 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Lethbridge Fish and Game Hut. Presented by JC Baking and Crafts, the Fall Market will feature all handmade items created by talented local children, such as bath bombs, jewelry, animal portraits, and so much more. For more information, visit the Kids Entrepreneur Fall Market Facebook page. Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered recovery program for any hurt, hang-up, and habit. This group meets Friday nights at Park Meadows Baptist Church. The evening begins at 7 p.m. with a large group session, followed by small groups at 8 with coffee and dessert at 9. For more information, visit celebraterecovery.ca or call the church office at 403-327-4422. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Things are really starting to heat up in the race to succeed Jason Kenney as Premier of Alberta and the new leader of the UCP. Former Alberta Finance Minister Travis Toews is one of the candidates who's hoping to secure enough of the vote to become our new leader. MLA Travis Toews joins us now from Edmonton. Travis, welcome to Bridge City News.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, there's been a bit of infighting within the party, within the UCP. What do you think it'll really take to unite the Conservatives once again as we head into next year's provincial election?
Sure. There's been a lot of division in the last couple of years in our communities, businesses, sadly, even in some of our faith communities, churches, and tragically, even in families. Our Conservative movement hasn't been exempt of that division. And, as I travel around the province and hear from conservative-minded Albertans, I'm always interested in their perspective in terms of how do we go on from here? Because it's been a tough 2 years. I would suggest there's a couple of things that are very important. Number one, I really believe that it'll be critical for our big tent diverse party, our big tent diverse conservative movement, that we again focus on those core values that unite us, the values of fiscal responsibility, a commitment to a market-based economy, and the commitment to the core value of individual freedom and liberty and limited government. And I believe if we can focus again on those core values, the values that united us in 2019, that we can again come together. Instead of focusing on those issues that divide, those issues will always be there. But look, we have a big tent diverse movement and party. That's also what makes us strong. I believe that's also what makes us fit to govern.
Now, we talk about a big tent, obviously, but what about social conservatives within the party? How can you ensure as leader that they won't be shut out?
Well, look, many of my personal views would align with the views of social conservatives. That's where I am personally. And yet I deeply respect the views of others right across the spectrum of our conservative movement. There are many positions held on social issues, held passionately by really good people right across the spectrum. And we have to recognize that and respect that. Again, I will ensure that every MLA has a voice in this caucus, that every MLA has the ability to bring their views and the views of their constituents passionately to the caucus table. I've got a plan to manage caucus so that all MLAs can firstly represent their constituents fairly and accurately, and secondly, bring their own personal views to the table and advocate for those.
Rachel Notley and the NDP have been acting like a government in waiting, coming up with plans to help our economy get back on track. What do you think it'll take to help many of our small to medium business owners get back to black like the province is trying to get right now as we make our way out of the pandemic? I know we no longer have the deficit, but we still have a debt that we're tackling.
Sure. Well, one thing we won't do is what the NDP did in 2015. And that's raise taxes, create extra regulatory burden and hurdles that sent tens of billions of dollars of capital out of the province and ultimately undermined our economic growth in this province, put us really into recession and left far less opportunity for our small businesses and entrepreneurs. The last 2 years have been very tough for many of our small businesses, especially those in hospitality, those in accommodation, tourism, for instance. Now, Alberta provided more support than any other province to our small businesses, but I don't want to pretend that support covered all the losses. It didn't. I know it's been tough. Look, I'm a small business owner as well. The way we've benefited and the way we've seen others benefit is when we see general strength in the economy, when there's investment returning back to the province, when folks are moving back into Alberta like they are again today. That creates increasing opportunity for entrepreneurs and small businesses to benefit in their business enterprises. So again, I would do, if I have the privilege of serving Albertans as their premier, I will continue to do all I can to ensure Alberta is most competitive in all of our key sectors, including the tourism sector, which we have great potential and we have great plans to ultimately grow that sector, but also in areas like, the petrochemical industry, where tens of billions of dollars are stacked up to come in. The tech sector right now is growing in leaps and bounds. I've understood there's 3,000 unfilled positions in Calgary alone in the tech sector. We're seeing strength in film and television. We've seen that industry grow from $100 million a year to over $1 billion annually. We're seeing strength in the manufacturing sector. De Havilland, they announced that they were going to move their water bomber manufacturing plant, not into Quebec, where they get government subsidy, but right here into Alberta. All of that investment coming into the province, I believe, will position Alberta small businesses for recovery and growth in the years ahead. My commitment is to ensure that government creates the most competitive playing field possible. And lastly, the other issue that's really plaguing growth in Alberta businesses is a limitation on labor and talent and skills. Ultimately, employers across sectors and regions are looking for staff, and they're having trouble finding those staff. Now, when I was finance minister, I added $600 million to better prepare Albertans to engage in this workforce. I did that in the context of a balanced budget. I need to point that out. But we've got a bit of a misalignment with skills. For many Albertans today, we need to ensure that we're investing in those individuals so they can participate in this new and more diverse economy.
So Travis, you talked about, how Alberta's trying to diversify its economy, not just the energy sector, but the IT sector with technology, film and television. What about our farmers? What can you really do to help our producers if you become leader?
You know that, one of our core businesses is a cattle ranching operation. I'm a past president of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. I have great affection for agriculture, and I believe it has incredible potential in the province of Alberta. Look, I came from New York a few months ago as the Minister of Finance, meeting with the investment community, as you would expect. Virtually every conversation morphed to North American energy and food security. Alberta has not only a great opportunity, I suggest a deep responsibility to get on with the responsible production of both energy and agriculture. And we need to do all we can to position those sectors to be most competitive. I'll be rolling out an agriculture platform here in the upcoming days that will make additional moves on improving the competitiveness of Alberta's agriculture industry and agriculture manufacturing and processing sector. But when I was Minister of Finance, I approved major generational investments in irrigation. Again, I've been as I travel southern Alberta and I see the incredible generational investments that were made at the early part of the 1900s that have served families and communities so well generation after generation, I was inspired to invest further in that agriculture and irrigation sector. I was also instrumental in funding the beginning of the twinning of Highway 3, which again is key infrastructure that agriculture manufacturers and processors have suggested needs to be improved for them to land their investment here in the province.
A number of premiers, Travis, said during the pandemic that a number of missteps were made because this is uncharted waters, uncharted territory for many of our leaders during the pandemic. What missteps do you think were made within the Kenney government, and what do you think maybe the government can learn from this, or you can learn from it potentially as a leader to help you to grow and be even a better leader?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I will say this, that, the government navigated the time of the pandemic very imperfectly. And I know that for sure. I know of certain mistakes that I could call out today. And I know there were other errors that perhaps we're not even aware of yet. Number one, I would appoint an independent body to do a third-party review on the government of Alberta's response during COVID. Look, I think it's going to be important. I think it's critically important that Albertans know where the government made perhaps responsible, correct decisions and where the government erred over the last 2 years. I think that's critically important. And it's critically important to inform future governments should we face a challenge like this in the future. One other learning was to be very careful in making definitive statements. The easiest way to break trust with an electorate is to make a definitive statement and go back on that statement or your word. That immediately breaches trust between a government and constituents. One thing we also learned is that Alberta has very inadequate healthcare capacity, particularly in key areas like ICU. You know, I didn't realize this going in, but Alberta, the highest funding healthcare jurisdiction in Canada on a per capita basis, had the lowest number of baseline ICU beds on a per capita basis. That ultimately limited the runway materially in terms of the options that government had. So one thing that I'm committed to, and one thing Budget 2022 actually also reflects, is additional investment in healthcare to expand healthcare capacity in key areas where the pandemic showed we were very deficient, including ICU capacity.
Well, we only have a couple of moments left here, Travis, but I wanted to talk about the anti-Ottawa sentiment here in Alberta continues to grow. Many Albertans feel a really strong disconnect with the Trudeau Liberals. There's even more talk of Western separation. What do you say to those who want to see Alberta become its own sovereign nation?
Well, look, I absolutely agree that we need to take a page out of Quebec's playbook and make incremental changes that improve Alberta's lot in confederation. But one of those pages is not separation. You know, when Quebec got close to separation, threatened to separate, there were a lot of things that took place. One of them was tens of billions of dollars of capital fled that economy. As I talked to folks who were close to the issue, they said you couldn't rent a moving van in Montreal for a year and a half with all the head offices that moved from Montreal down to Toronto and Bay Street. That's what helped build Bay Street. I will not take that approach as the Premier of the province. We've made great gains in this economy. We cannot see those eroded. But what we can do is take a page out of Quebec's playbook in this way. Every time Quebec has had a government in Ottawa that needs Quebec politically, and that's been far too often with the Liberals holding power too many years in this country, Quebec has made incremental gains because they've known they've had significant political clout. Alberta's not done that. You know, we were governed extremely well during the Harper years as a nation, I believe. But during that time, when we had a conservative government in Ottawa, that depends on Alberta politically. I can't identify one material change that we made to equalization, for instance, or fiscal stabilization, any federal fiscal transfer program. We didn't make a move on an Alberta pension plan or lobby hard for tax points to erode Ottawa's taxation power and move that power to provinces. We can never let an opportunity like that pass again. Now, there are many things we can do between now and when we get a more favorable government in Ottawa. We won't sit on our hands, but I would suggest this. I would bring an assertive and strategic approach, not the approach that has failed Albertans in the past, one full of political bluster and rhetoric, overpromising and underdelivering.
Former Alberta Finance Minister and current UCP leadership candidate Travis Toews, thanks so much for joining us today from Edmonton.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Hal.
We are at the Lethbridge Fish and Game Shooting Sports Facility. I am joined by Alan Friesen, who is the past president of Lethbridge Fish and Game and a firearms instructor. Right, Alan?
Correct.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Bridge City News. Actually, you're hosting us, so
thank
you for having us here. Let's talk about what Bill C-21 actually is.
So, I guess the components that I understand it to be of what I know, because it kind of reveals as we go with the changes. As an example, there's not supposed to be a registry, but there is a registry now, right? So there was a registry was put in place, then discontinued a number of years ago. Now on an unofficial basis, they've introduced a registry. So people like Marksman Guns and Sports, where they have a store, now they have to record every transaction, the owner, and they have to maintain these records for 20 years. That's a registry. So that's one thing that's been slid in that, oh, we're getting this back. Two is that these firearms that now have been said, oh, these are too scary, Canadians can't own them, those ones that are going to be prohibited, well, that equipment then will be apparently bought back, which is different than what they've done in the past. In the past, they kind of have a grandfathered kind of a status, and then the person who's grandfathered keeps the equipment until they die, and then they destroy it, is basically the idea. Okay. So with this one here, it's different. They're going to come back and say, oh, you can't use this until we come back and buy it from you, and when they buy it, it's going to be you know, it doesn't matter, as a property owner who legally bought a piece of property in Canada, they're going to tell me what they're going to accept, what I'm going to accept for it, and that's going to be the way it is, right? So that's kind of the big chunks to it. Yes.
So do you think that Bill C-21 will actually stop current handgun owners from owning handguns in the future?
Well, for currents, no. My understanding is they will be able to retain those guns until they die, but everybody else go forward would not. Which then like we have an amazing youth shooting program here, safe shooting program, and we have youth that are part of that, and we got 30 kids that are starting tonight in that program, right? And it is a really amazing opportunity to teach responsibility to children, to show them that their action, action they take has a consequence. With handguns, it happens like right away, and so we want to make that real clear that what they're using, that they have to respect it, use it safely, or they cannot participate. Yeah. So we have kids that are amazingly responsible, amazingly good citizens that have come out of that program. They're great.
So, Alan, do you think that we're now going to be seeing a rush across Canada of people buying handguns before this bill passes?
Yes. Every time the federal government announces firearm safety laws, my student list goes up, swells up, and every time people are in a flurry to buy equipment that might go away in the future, right, or might be restricted or controlled. Some of that is bizarre. When we're talking about the restricted firearms, the ones that are going to be restricted now, or prohibited, I should say. One, in my case, I have one that I bought 25 years ago, a non-restricted firearm, can use it, shoot a gopher or
shoot a gopher.
Well, you know, there are problems at the farm, so, or shoot a coyote if that's killing our cats or whatever, and then you clean it, put it back in the safe, and it's good. You know, use it for another year, right? So now I am a criminal now if I take that out of the safe. Well, that's craziness.
This, of course, is a really emotional time with all recent mass shootings in the U.S.
Yes.
So a lot of people do want to see governments do something to stop that gun violence. So do you think that banning guns will have a tangible effect on this?
No, unfortunately it will not. It's and the terrible tragedy, I cannot imagine the pain those parents in Texas are going through to have their little ones killed and it's heartbreaking. Some of them people will never recover from that kind of trauma, right? So it's horrible. But firearms, violence, like all violence, is just a symptom, right? We got to get at the cause. What is the cause? How does an 18-year-old kid get to the point where he is so disconnected and so full of hate that he's going to kill all these little innocent children, right? How does that happen? So what supports were missing to get that kid to a point where he could be helped and he would never got to that stage, right? So, and I'm not blaming, and grandma seems like she did her best to be a loving parent, but you know what, the kid was apparently, really abused and teased and that kind of thing, and not unlike, remember the tragedy in Tabor, 15 years ago? Same thing, a little kid that was, picked on and abused and told he's a worthless piece of shit every day, and then all of a sudden what happens, right? Violence is the problem. How do we address the violence? Because that's the issue, right? And I think we have to draw a distinction between self-violence and violence against others. Do you think that makes sense, that distinction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because violence against self, our laws don't seem to want to be involved with that if a person, a Canadian, no longer wants to be here, that they have the right to no longer be here, and then they can even get the medically assisted dying if they want. So self against harm is entirely different. So the whole thing that we're addressing is self against others. So the
harm against self, harm against self. Yeah.
Harm against others. Thank you. Harm against others. So that's the issue we're addressing. As it relates to firearms, that's a very, very small part of the problem. 80% of the firearm deaths in Canada are suicide. And then of the 5% that are accidents, I'm sure many of those are actually suicides as well. So we're talking a very small chunk of 1,200 Canadians, according to the Firearm Safety Course, 1,200 Canadians who die every year, at least 80% are self-harm. So
it's so sad.
It is.
Do you think it's fair to say that a bill like this, new gun laws won't necessarily change the minds of hardened criminals or gang members?
No.
To somehow give up gun violence?
The laws that come into place, if we're following, if the responsible firearm owners are already following all the laws, right, and all the laws already will not allow, are so stringent already. Just as a good example, we keep hearing this as assault-style rifles, right? That's what you keep hearing. Okay, so what is an assault-style rifle? According to Google, if you look it up, it's a fully automatic firearm that is used in military pursuits, right? You're going to use it to kill people. That's what an assault rifle is. We don't have assault rifles in Canada. They've been banned in Canada since 1978. So we don't have them. They're banned. There is no fully automatic firearms. Well, pardon me, there's a couple old guys that probably have them, and they got them in their safe because they're never going to leave, and when they die, they're going to be chopped up and destroyed. So we don't have assault rifles in Canada, period.
Okay. Any thoughts on where the government could better spend our money to reduce gun violence?
I love that you asked that question. That is a beautiful question. But I'm going to change it up a little bit, okay? I think that reducing violence is important, but I don't think it's just gun violence because that's a really, really small part of the puzzle. Here's what I think is something we could make huge gains for people. Every day, every night in Canada, there's 3,500 women who are escaping domestic violence in their home, kiddies on their shoulders or on their hips, trying to get out of harm's way every night. And about 300 more women and their kiddos don't find shelter because there's not enough room. Okay, that is where we could make a huge, huge difference in people's lives. Instead of looking at a problem where it's mostly to do with self-harm, let's look at harm to others, very vulnerable people, and give them supports and protection.
Wow, okay. Do you think that it's too easy for someone to get a gun license in Canada? Do you think that our gun laws are too lax?
No, I know we look at the South and we say, oh, we got this big problem because the South has a big problem. Our numbers are entirely different. We have 1,200 deaths in Canada from firearms in a year, right? 80% of those are suicide. In the United States, it's 35,000, something like that. Instead of 1,200, it's 35,000. It's a whole different context, right? And then also there's the firearm controls there. You could buy a gun anywhere, any weekend, you can go to a swap meet and buy a gun in the United States, right? They don't even ask for your piece of ID, right? Here, you have to take a course. You have to take 2 courses, Canadian Firearm Safety Course or Canadian Firearm Restricted Safety Course, in order that you can apply for a license. When you apply for license, you're going to answer questions about your mental health, your financial health, your marital health, or your relationship health, those kind of things. You're going to provide references that are going to check you over. They're going to do a police check. And firearm owners in Canada are the most vetted people in our whole country, because every day, if I'm a firearm owner, which I am, they'd run a police check on me every day on every Canadian who has a firearm license. So we are kept to a higher standard. They don't check you, they check me every day. And if there's something there's an issue that maybe I've gone to violence, or then I get approached, and gee, we're going to take them firearms, right? And I don't have any problem with that. That's being prudent, but it's rarely. I've been teaching this course for 35 years. I can't think of one time where I had a student say, ooh, that guy shouldn't have a gun. I mean, the people who come here are just people who want to engage in a very safe, exciting, dynamic sport that can be a lifetime sport and is the safest sport in the world. Like, you do the stats on the Olympics, like of shooting sports worldwide. Shooting is the safest sport.
So how do we keep guns from getting into the hands of the wrong people?
Well, one, be very, very harsh on the criminals, right? Like, that's not happening right now. It's kind of, you catch them and they get a slap in the hand and they go out. No. Firearm laws, firearm infractions, violence of any sort should be extremely harshly dealt with. We got to stop it. Like, that's the problem. Violence leads to trauma for people, right? And then that trauma leads to lives that are really hard for their whole life unless they deal with the trauma they've experienced, and often they experience as a child.
You had kind of alluded to the youth shooting program that you have here. So let's talk about the many individuals and families with kids who come out to the shooting gallery here. Is it a safe sport, in your opinion?
Let me tell you about a time when I was wrong. I've been wrong a few times. Rick Blakely was saying range 3 over here, we're going to make it into a 22 range only. They're quiet, very, very little recoil, right? And I thought, that's crazy. What is he doing? But then every night, every weekend, I see grandma there with his grandchild, and I see grandma and the aunties shooting, and it's just a beautiful family place. You come out, you buy a box of ammo for, whatever this is, $3, and you got an afternoon of fun, right, with your grandkids. It's a beautiful place. So yeah, very, very family oriented activity that way. And with the youth program, oh man, we got some kids that are, there's one kid, he was so small, he was 12. I was really worried about him, but he was really, really dedicated to muzzle control and trigger control. He was very, very focused on it. But he had to put 2 fingers on the trigger to press it when he was so small.
Sure, of course.
But now he's like this tall and, you know, like just an amazing gun handler. If anything happened, I would not be at all worried that he would be safe, whatever happened. So.
Okay, so Alan, what are the benefits of kids learning to shoot?
Well, the best thing I can share for you is that there's a pretty, in all of our life, we make decisions, and those decisions result in consequences, and that, you know, here's what happens because of it, right? With shooting, that is like down to a millisecond, right? I take this action, I press this trigger, this bullet leaves this muzzle, it hits there. So it happens right now. So in a similar way to my life, I have control. If I have control what happens here, I'm going to control what happens down there. In my life, I can make adjustments. With a firearm, I can't. Once the trigger is pressed, the bullet's going where it's going to go. But that tie to this action results in this consequence, and then relate that to this applies to your life as well, right? If you do these things, here's what's going to happen.
So life lessons then.
I think so.
Okay, so what would you say to a parent who says, hey, is this potentially going to make my child like violence or become more violent?
It will 100% help your child to become a more responsible human being, period, full stop. There's nobody that we get out here and they say, ooh, that kid came from our program and now, you know, we got to go get him arrested because he's lost it, right? That doesn't happen, right? So
Alan, I know that we would love to hear about the facility here. It's large, it's way bigger than I expected. This is my first time here, so tell me about it.
This is an amazing facility, and we're very, very thankful for our relationship with the City of Lethbridge, Mayor, Council, and the administration. They've been very supportive. We recently had a huge enhancement to this facility. It's $1.7 million with city funds, with fish and game funds, and with a commitment to support our youth program going on. Every year we spend about $30,000 supporting youth programs. So that's free ammunition, free instruction, free range time, free targets. So, and all of the people who do that are all volunteers. So we have people who volunteer to make that happen. So an amazing world-class facility right here, City of Lethbridge right there. How can we operate a range when the City of Lethbridge is right there? Because this is a total containment facility. With these last enhancements, this is like the world class, the best standard you can get in terms of a projectile management. That's really what a range is, a projectile management system. And we have the best system that exists right here.
Okay, and you were saying that even the Lethbridge Police Service comes here to do their practicing.
They do. Lethbridge Police, RCMP, CBSA, we have them and support them. We're very, very big fans of law enforcement and working with law enforcement. We've had situations where law enforcement have came to us and asked us about an individual. Is this, you know, should we be worried? That kind of a thing. And what we will often do is just say, here's our cameras, here's our feed. You know, you give it a look, right? We want to be everybody's safe. We're on the same side with anti-gun Sally that doesn't want anybody to own a gun. She don't want anybody to gun because she wants to be safe. We want you to be safe. We want everybody to be safe. Firearms by themselves are not dangerous. It's a piece of equipment. We can all use them safely if we choose to.
Well, Alan, thanks so much for having us out today. I know I learned a lot for sure.
Hey, I appreciate you coming. Thanks for coming to our amazing facility and your interest in firearm safety. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That is Alan Friesen, the past president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game and the firearms instructor here at Lethbridge Fish and Game Shooting and Sports Facility. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.